Hi everyone, my name is Isabella Perez. Today I'll be walking you through how two essential systems in vertebrae, gas exchange and osmoregulation, evolved in response to the transition from water to land. As animals faced new environmental challenges, these systems had to adapt in fascinating ways. We'll move chronologically through the vertebrate lineage to explore how these adaptations reflect the idea that structure follows function. Introduction. Gas exchange and osmoregulation are deeply connected systems that help animals survive in diverse environments. Gas exchange allows them to take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide, while osmoregulation manages the balance of water and ions. As vertebrates shifted from aquatic habitats to land, these processes became more complex. And what's interesting is how each evolutionary step tells a story. So, how the environment pushed vertebrates to innovate in very specific ways. Early aquatic vertebrates. Our story begins with the early lobed finfishes. These animals lived in warm, shallow waters that didn't always have a reliable oxygen supply. So even though they used gills to breathe, they also began developing simple lungs, kind of like a backup plan. Their kidneys were also evolving to help deal with challenges of fresh water, where they had to actively manage the loss of important ions. So, right from the start, these systems were responding to unstable and low oxygen environments. And that's what they look like. So, transitional form, the Tikitaalik. So, next we'll meet the Tikitaalik, which is a really fascinating transitional species between the fish and amphibians. It had both some gills and lungs, but what really stands out is its ability to raise its head above the water. So thanks to a mobile neck and a flat skull, um, it probably lived in environments where oxygen levels in the water changed a lot. So being able to breathe air gave it a big survival advantage. These changes we see in its skeleton, like a stronger rib cage, suggests it was starting to rely more on air than water for breathing. And I would say that's a major evolutionary step. And that's what they look like. So the early tetrapods. So from the Tikitaalik, we move into the first true tetrapods. So the Ishlostega and the Anthrostega. So the Anthrostega was mostly aquatic, while the Ishlostega was starting to show signs of more permanent life on land. These animals developed stronger lungs and ribs, but also relied on their skin for gas exchange. So essentially, that's basically in wet environments. So their kidneys became more efficient at controlling ion balance, which was really important in the freshwater habitats where essential ions are easily lost. And this just shows the difference in their skeletal structure. So next, we move on to the amphibian case study, the axolotl. So we're going to fast forward to the modern amphibian, the axolotl. What makes this animal unique is that it never goes through metamorphosis. It keeps its external gills as an adult, which are great for breathing in the low oxygen lakes where it lives. But that's not all. The axolotls also have specialized cells in their gills that actually absorb sodium and chloride from the water, which is something they need because their environment is so dilute. So instead of trying to adapt to life on land, the axolotl stayed put and became incredibly specialized for life in water. So the reptiliomorphs and the amniotes. Eventually, vertebrates fully committed to land. This brought a whole new set of challenges, mainly how to conserve water while still breathing and excreting waste. The development of the amniotic egg was huge. It allowed embryos to develop a self-contained, moist environment. At the same time, their lungs became primarily respiratory organ, and their skin evolved to become more water resistant. Their kidneys also became more efficient, which helped the animals hold on to water and salts in the more dry environment. The reptile case study, the red-eared slider turtle. So the red-eared slider turtle is a great example of how some reptiles adapted to live in freshwater environments that aren't always predictable. While it primarily uses lungs to breathe, it can also absorb oxygen through the cloacal bursae, which basically specialized sacs near their tail. This lets it stay underwater for long periods of time without resurfacing. Their kidneys also help regulate water and ion balance, allowing it to survive in environments where oxygen and salinity can change pretty quickly. It's a perfect case of dual systems working together for survival. Summary and adaptational trends. So if we take a step back, we see a clear pattern. Vertebrates started with simple diffusion through gills and skin, but over time developed complex systems for breathing air and managing water loss. Each clade, whether fish, amphibians, or reptiles, added something new in response to these specific environmental pressures. These changes weren't random. They were functional solutions to real world problems. Whether it was low oxygen, scarce ions, or the threat of dehydration, evolution didn't just change how animals looked, it also rewired how their bodies worked, which is pretty cool. And this is the phylogenetic tree of how they developed and evolved over time. And all the information I've presented is supported by peer-to-peer research. So from early studies on gill function to more recent work on amphibian ion transport and reptilian cloacal respiration, the evidence gives us strong understanding of how these systems have evolved. And thank you so much for listening.